Hey, what's up everybody, Blaze for here, and today I have for you guys another video of Persona 5X, or at least for some of you guys, a video explaining exactly what is Persona 5X. Now this game has been out for at least a couple months. I want to say it's about 100 days now, and a lot of you guys still are unsure exactly what this game is. So inside today's video, I'm going to be addressing everything you need to know down to like the gameplay, some of the story aspects, gacha aspects, anything of that nature to either encourage you to play it or either encourage you to stay away from it. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So what exactly is P5X? Well, one of the things I'm going to go ahead and just address the elephant in the room is that this is a mobile gacha game in which a lot of you probably just cringed at me saying that, but they normally don't have a good impression on most communities. But I'll be honest with you, surprisingly, this one managed to actually hit closer to home for P5 than I ever thought it would be. So I'm going to explain a little bit on this. To give you all pretty much a thought process of how this game really does work, it's pretty much P5 but with more of an extra twist. For example, we have our main protagonist, which is named Wonder, who's always pretty silent, but is normally just a ordinary student. Nothing's happened to this guy, he's absolutely just a regular old guy. But on the daily basis, we see how the world is really unfair and there's situations that he really just cannot control. Now, this sounds very much so familiar to P5 in general, but it kind of changes shortly after when we meet Referu, which is going to be a bird that you guys can kind of call an owl. I just call him the boy. But in general, this guy's going to take us to the metaverse, and things are really going to start turning up once we get there because we're able to actually obtain our powers, and that actually allows us to start changing things ourselves. Now, myself, I don't really want to spoil you guys too much on the story, so I'm not going to go too far into this, but there's currently two large palaces with two distinctively different like shadows running these guys, and they feel way more human than you think. Instead of just being absolute villains or like absolute terrible jerkwads like a certain person a lot of us do know, they feel like actual people with their motives being addressed in general. It's really refreshing and actually shows that the devs really care about the game and try to entertain their players. Although it does parallel a little bit with P5X, which there's theories, or like P5 in general, there's theories out there that could be a reasoning why for this. It's really good and it's in its own value. Now, this is coming from a person who not only is playing this in just Taiwan, Korean, and things like that, but I'm using a translator. So I've sat here and actually translated majority of the story and gotten the gist of what's going on, and it is actually really good. But that's just the story side of things and how we're going about it. What about the gameplay? The gameplay is literally as you guys see it. It is P5, regular old P5 right here, the one that we know and love. All that's different is its faster pace. Pretty much the fighting is exactly the same premise as always. You get to wander around in different palaces, even in mementos, and several different game modes such as like guild battle and things like that. Just fighting overworld shadows, loot some things and advance with just the overall story. Nothing's really too different. There is a huge difficulty spike though. It's kind of like playing P5 on a way larger difficulty than you normally would, in which in-game battles are the only real thing that are kind of different. Now, what I mean by this is because now we have our 4 party members, which is always the same, and a navigator. But this navigator isn't based on one person. There are going to be multiple navigators that do different things, and Wonder, of course, is like Joker, where we have to have him in here. Now, of course, Joker is always going to be the cooler one, but that's just for me. But anyways, when a shadow does appear or you run into a shadow or things like that, there's going to be things that is weak to, resistance, immune, and or well-rounded to. Nothing too different. Though now enemies do take a little bit of a harder hit, and you can't just win the game by just looping something where it's like, oh, I'm doing a weak attack, I all out attack, and I win. In fact, it actually requires a little bit more process of thinking, building your teams, and things that actually come into play that make it fairly challenging and fun. Now, another difference with this is one of the core mechanics, which is baton passes, which whenever you got down a persona and you actually ended up knocking them with like something they were weak to, you're able to kind of change what you wanted to do or who you wanted to attack. Now with baton passes, it's kind of like a QTE, aka a quick time event, where one of your party members of the respective element will then baton pass with you, and it will end up actually doing a respective element, hitting a persona that can either get knocked down or somewhat deal some extra damage. Now, this can be somewhat spammable depending on the chaining that you're doing, which is fairly easy as well, as long as you have the right elements in your party. This eventually will allow you to do an all-out attack, of course, in the long run, but it's nothing too crazy. Now, highlights, of course, make an appearance in the game once again, which by having certain characters, you're able to do a crazy flashy little special, which do different special little attacks. As well, there's a new character that can build highlight meter, which is kind of different. Now, the thing that is really different when it does come down to the gameplay is the navigators. Now, how it was in the game, or at least inside of P5, we had Futaba where she would just go out of nowhere and use some of her navigator skills. But inside of here, we're actually able to command the navigators every so couple rounds, in which things are a little bit different. With this, we're able to pick specific things based on their movesets, and these can either be debuffs to the enemy, buffs in general, and they can change the tide of the game heavily. But going ahead and get into at least the game mode side of things, there's a ton that you guys can really look at. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Going ahead and taking a look in the game mode side of things, there is a ton to do. Of course, we have the overworld, which there's tons of fun things to do, such as like expand your confidants and do things like that. But there's also modes such as Velvet Trials, which are similar to a mode like Score Battle in P5. There's also a roguelike mode named Heart Rail, which are very interesting as well, where you just take your team in here, do a bunch of random instances, get these buffs and battles, or get little prizes and upgrades to end up beating the final boss to do an entire dungeon. It really does feel amazing when actually taking this into account, and I feel like with the different modes that you guys will end up seeing, it's gonna be really nice to keep you occupied for a long time. Now, there's also modes that do utilize some of your stamina, in which is a daily grind for either level up materials and other items, but we'll go into detail with that very later on. Now, taking this account, it is an online game, so what would an online game be without having, of course, guilds or different friend things? We do have guild modes itself, and which is going to be a different type of style for some people who are used to seeing Persona, but pretty much you're going against some different shadows and utilizing strategies, team builds, and things like that. You go for different points, getting the more points and things like that. Of course, you're going to get yourself up on the leaderboard. Being higher on the leaderboard gets you different little rewards and things like that, but don't worry, it's nothing too heavily like optimizable, to be honest. The prizes are pretty okay. You don't have to strive for the top, so don't get worried too much on that. But now that we went over at least the game mode side of things, let's go ahead and take a look into the Gacha Aspect. And yes, this is one of the few things that scare off a lot of people. So now I know with the Gacha Aspect in here, people have their answers, or at least their questions, and want insights on the game. For some of you guys who actually don't know exactly what Gacha is, think of it like this. You get game currency that you're able to get free to play through just grinding, different things like that, but you're able to pull for different characters. So let's say the character you really want and you don't have in your account is Joker or An. Well, there's a banner that you can pull for these said characters, though it is fully luck based. It only guarantees you this said character or a different character once you reach a certain number called a pity. Now for this game, it is actually 80 for the characters and 70 for the weapon. Throughout that 80 and 70 pity, you are able to get these said characters or get a 5-star, 4-star character, which can help you progress in the game, or either you can just be a collector and have them in general. This is always something that's going to be here. The banners do have, of course, their time limited times, but they're not like gone forever. They eventually will come back. Now you can very well farm up this available currency by doing dailies and just doing other content, or if you're a person who don't care and you just don't mind dropping the wallet, you could outright buy it with IRL cash. Now, I'll straight up be honest with you. This game itself doesn't really have a bad gacha element mechanic. You don't feel like you need to buy things, nor does the game feel so heavily inclined on actually being a gacha. It just feels more likely you're playing P5 and just enjoying your time. Of course, characters do have like their better uses. It always is good to get certain characters for different things, but you don't feel like you're forced to get this character, you're forced to get the character's weapon and things of that nature. In fact, even there's 4 stars that play better than the 5 stars a lot of the times, and you can utilize them to go through all of the story. Yes, I am saying that correctly. You do not need these crazy 5 stars to beat story. You can just play your real characters and enjoy yourself and beat story with 4 stars. It's that simple. Pretty much nothing is really inclined on you having to purchase. Nothing is inclined on you really going crazy into revenue. And how I know this is because your boy used a 4-star team for the longest of time to get through the 2 palaces that were currently out. So without a doubt, it's definitely possible, and you can just have your fun whenever you want to have it. Plus, of course, when it comes down to currency and the availability of it, especially in the free-to-play side of things, there's always tons of events, tons of giveaways that the devs be doing, and you're gonna, without a doubt, always get draws to go ahead and get a character. Now, when it comes down to getting characters back to back, you do want to try to save in between and skip certain banners, because certain ones will move to a standard draw, which are always available, while other ones will be a limited draw, which aren't always available. But that just goes over the game modes and gacha aspects. Let's go ahead and get into the leveling and gearing systems. Now, going further into the leveling and gearing systems, since we went over the main problems, which was the gacha aspect, this is going to be another factor for people. Leveling and gearing are a big thing inside of this game, of course, because you're going to need to go up different levels to make your team as best as it can be. This can be divided in multiple different ways, for example, such as like wonder levels, which is our character no matter what, or our MC. This is like an account level deal. The higher your account level, the higher wonder will be. Now, this is really important because by getting him up from just daily EXP in different quest lines and things like that, you can actually unlock caps for your characters, their weapons, special skill tree things that he specifically will have, and it will make him a lot better. A lot of these things, or at least this type of thing here, when it comes down to the account level, can really change up the battle, and even his skill tree, which are based on points that you get from making personas. I'll go into further detail on that later on in the video, but even those will change up the character in general and make him even better to pretty much get further on. Now, that's just one of the leveling systems. Breaking this down even further, you have other leveling systems such as character leveling, weapon leveling, persona skill leveling, and a infamous artifact system. Looking at the character leveling first here, it's just basic power increases. There's nothing too crazy with it. Mostly your characters can only be limit broken once you've rose a unit to their max level, and Wonder, being the MC of course, has a certain account level. This overall will allow you to lift the limit on this character, which can unlock other leveling components inside of the game. These leveling components can be limited to, well, not limited to, different content as well as weapon upgrades, in which for weapon upgrades, there is a really good factor for this. These upgrades are farmable, but the best part about it is, let's say you leveled up a 3-star, but you just managed to get a 5-star weapon, but the 3-star is already level 50. Go ahead and slap that bad boy on, or at least slap the level freaking 0 5-star weapon on, and it is now level 50. This is all because of weapon syncing. Weapon syncing is a thing that normally isn't in a lot of gachas because most gachas want you to squeeze out every material you can squeeze. But for this one, it saves you a lot of materials and time process. Any weapon that you get that is for the same character, the level will automatically sync. So for example, if I'm using Joker, I have a 3-star Joker weapon that I just managed to get to level 30, but I pulled his 5-star Joker weapon. I have to refarm those materials. In fact, no, you don't. You just go ahead and slap on the 5-star weapon and it will automatically be the level 30 process, and you can just keep on leveling. This is really good because a lot of games don't do this, And it really surprised me, especially when I started playing, to see that they really wanted to save us that time. Now, this does not go over, or at least cover up the fact that there are other leveling systems, such as like Persona skill leveling. Every time you upgrade a character and you slowly limit break them, these characters have, of course, their main Persona skills. Each of these skills are going to be somewhat useful, some more useful than the other one, and they all play into the character's kits. Some of these skills you might want to go ahead and upgrade, others you kind of want to ditch out and just not upgrade whatsoever, because it's all going to be based on the character. So if the character really needs to use a said skill, like a ton, so like Yusuke, he needs to use a counter. One of his main things is a counter skill, so you're going to be utilizing that quite a lot because it gives him shield and defense mechanisms. These are going to be ones that you're going to have to kind of figure out, and it's really nice to actually have because it makes you want to actually think about the characters and figure out what really makes them unique. All of these materials are actually farmable as well, which are 4 different little EXP components or stamina components. But at a certain point, the only thing that makes this a little bit saddening is you will need to fight palace bosses, which is a whole different game mode, which will give you better things to go up the higher levels. Now, this is somewhat annoying at times because it's limited to, I think, 2 every week instead of like 3 or 5. But all in all, this is only for the ultra high levels, so you won't really have to worry about that too much when you are getting the lower levels here. But time to address the one thing that all of us hate the most, and that is artifacts. For some of you guys who do not know exactly what artifacts are, think of them as separate pieces of gear that you get in an RPG. Now, not only do you need to farm these said separate pieces of gear, but they are totally RNG based. That means down to the main stats and everything like that, you will need to just hope that RNG is on your side in order to make your character stronger. This is going to be the long-term thing that you're going to be doing with a lot of characters and just farming non-stop to make your character stronger and go for harder content. Every artifact set that you end up getting will have something different on them, whether it's main stats, sub stats, and eventually if you get 4 of the same artifact set, you will end up getting a special buff. Now, each artifact set do have their little special buffs as well, which can give you a dedicated effect once they're paired. And even there is one more artifact called a arcane card, which is the big card in the middle that you see right there. That actually gives you a bigger effect as well. This is all RNG, but they are obtainable in different ways. For the arcane card specifically, you're mainly going to be obtaining these guys through guild bosses, shops, and things of that nature, such as events, which can be a little bit of a hassle. Now, the good part about this, although it does sound terrible, is the devs actually thought about the player base for once and made artifact grinding a little bit easier. In fact, you can actually have artifact stat pickers, which isn't new to most games, but what is new is artifact reset cards. These cards can actually reset a whole artifact all the way here. So let's say you have 3 stats. Let's put attack, speed, and defense on a actual set of gear, right? Well, you upgraded it to max. The stats went to the wrong placement. You got defense, which wasn't what you were looking for. You wanted crit rate. Well, you can take one of these reset cards, use it. It gives you all your materials back. It also allows you, when you upgrade that same card, that it can place a different stat as that 4th stat. It won't ever be the same exact stat unless you just get unlucky and actually have that luck, which has happened to me once before, but normally it can re-roll the stats and just be totally different in general. I feel like this is really good, and it does help a lot when you're trying to make different artifacts in this game. You still will need to farm quite a lot, and it does hurt a bunch when you're doing this, but it's still decent. You get your EXP back at the end of the day, and you can go ahead and grind better ones when it does come down to at least the character. So although artifacts are a huge part of this game, at least they're easier in this game. So we're gonna go ahead and check out the activity points, which are another huge part of this game as well. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that confidants are a major thing in this game too, in which I'm gonna expand on this now. For this, everything you do in at least the original P5, you could do here with extra incentives. So going to different little events, going to different cities, hanging out with some of your friends, working for money and different things of that nature, you're able to do this. All of it just revolves around activity points. Now, activity points, you get 5 of these daily, in which you can stack up to 20. So if you miss a day, no worries, it'll be there for you tomorrow. All of these things can be used for different hangouts, confidants of that sort, and even they brought back the MC stats where I just want to go ahead and read in the rain, or either I just want to go eat some noodles. Everything helps you out for different stat points, and things are valuable in their own ways. Even when it comes down to the confidant stats of things here, you can do a multitude of things just hanging out either with your friends, going ahead and making a relationship with one of the friends as well, and eventually maybe going on a date with them. It doesn't matter what you want to do here. In fact, you get you some gems at the end of the day, which makes it even better. So I feel like a lot of you guys will really enjoy the activity point thing. The only downside is, of course, 5 isn't that much. So, you know, some of you guys may want to go ahead and buy some things to try and get more of them. But at the end of the day, that is your choice. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and dip our toes into almost the final thing of the video, which is the Velvet Room. Velvet Room is one of the things I say for last because just like all Persona players, we've all done our time in some point of our lives and spent countless hours in the Velvet Room, either just vibing to the just calm music or sitting here going insane, fusing personas and inheriting skills. Well, this Velvet Room is no different. We have a new attendant instead of course, the 2 twins here. We have just one attendant named Merope. Now, we're once again accompanied by Igor, where we're allowed to fuse, inherit it, and actually advance our personas in this area. Now, this is normally where you're going to want to focus a lot of your mid to end game like deals here, because a lot of your personas you're going to need are going to be highly useful, but consume a lot of time to make. Personas are level capped just like in the original game, but by our MC's level, aka our account's level, which does suck sometimes. But to be honest, it's honestly best for the game because the higher you are, the harder things are going to be. Now, of course, if you do take the shortcut and you get Merope's confidant up, you are able to do things a little bit quicker and actually make things a little bit less expensive. But still, it is a little bit harder the higher you get up. Things are going to be expensive, things are going to be crazy, but all in all, it's going to be freaking fun. All of it really does go back to P5, and you're going to want to create as many personas as possible because remember, I mentioned earlier, Wonder has a skill tree. The more personas that you end up making for this, the more of that skill tree you're going to be able to unlock and continue going into. And personas are just constantly being added to this. Yes, that is true. We are getting constant personas added. Recently, it had like Jack Frost that joined the Elise Fray, and which is really cool to see that they're adding in extra personas. So who knows? We might get some different personas that weren't never in at least 5 in general, and that's going to be absolutely insane to see. Now, by doing this, of course, you're going to be helping out Wonder a lot, drastically changing his playstyle and how your team fits. So surely do be ready to dive in when it does come out to this side of things. Now, I've explained everything that I had down for now with you guys, but there is still a ton more that this game has to offer. And I have to admit, it does surprise me all in all. But if some of you guys want to test it out yourself, I have both the links inside of the description. Check that out. And if you want to at least need some help on how to navigate where to get this game and things of that nature, or even if you need an English translator, go ahead and jump into the worldwide P5X server. And of course, my server here, I'll be trying to help out as many people as possible. And they can also help you out as well for the English translator if you do very well need that. But for now, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Did smash that like button with your forehead and consider subscribing if you are new. Peace out.